What was he, and more importantly, what was I? He turned away from the window and looked directly at the door. My breath caught. For a split second, I thought he saw me, but he just rubbed his eyes and muttered, "Need more sleep." Then he walked right past me, brushing the air I stood in like a breeze moving through a shadow. My skin prickled with electricity as he passed, and something inside me twisted violently, like I was being pulled in two directions at once. That I followed him down the stairs, my feet not quite touching the floor. He moved with purpose, slipping into my old routine like he'd been doing it forever: coffee first, toast next, music on low in the background. The house was warm and alive with the hum of daily life. Everything I loved was here, being lived by someone else. That I stared at his hands. My hands. They poured the coffee, flipped the toast, opened the fridge to grab the same bottle of orange juice I always drank straight from. It was maddening. I wanted to scream, to pound the walls, to tear everything apart and make him see me. But no sound came from my mouth. No matter how wide I opened it, how hard I tried, I was mute to this world. That he sat at the table, eating like nothing was wrong. Then, casually, as if remembering something minor, he pulled out a small, folded note from his pocket and laid it on the table. The same note Jonah had placed on my coffin. He unfolded it and read it again, his lips moving silently. I moved closer, leaning in, trying to read over his shoulder. But the handwriting blurred and twisted as if rejecting me. Then something stranger happened. That he whispered, "You were never supposed to come back." I froze. Had he said that out loud? Or was I imagining it? "You hear me?" he said again, louder this time, eyes still locked on the paper. "You weren't supposed to come back. You had your chance." His voice had changed, deeper, colder, and laced with something ancient. He wasn't talking to himself. He was talking to me. He looked up suddenly, staring directly into the air where I stood. This time, I knew he saw me. His eyes locked onto mine, and a slow grin spread across his face. "There you are," he said softly. "Took you long enough." I stumbled back, crashing into a bookshelf that didn't even wobble. I was beginning to understand. He wasn't just some doppelganger or shapeshifter. He was me, or at least something that had taken my place. "Why?" I tried to ask. "What are you?" He stood up, still smiling. "You should have stayed gone." "But no. You had to come watch your own funeral. You just couldn't let go." He walked toward me slowly, calmly, as if approaching a wounded animal. "It happens sometimes. People die, and their souls don't know it. They cling. They linger. Most fade after a while. But you? You're stubborn." I backed into the hallway, trying to put space between us. But no matter how far I moved, he kept pace like a shadow stretching in twilight. "You don't belong here anymore," he said, reaching toward me. "You had your life. You used it. Now it's mine." His fingers brushed mine, and I felt it. A jolt of searing, burning cold that shot up my arm and through my chest. I gasped and stumbled backward into the wall. He laughed softly, cruelly. "You feel that? That's the price of watching your own death." And then he blinked out of existence. No flash. No noise. Just gone. I stood there, stunned, heart hammering in my chest, or what felt like a chest. I was still breathing, still thinking, still trapped in the waking nightmare of a life that didn't want me anymore. That night, I wandered the streets. I didn't feel hunger. I didn't feel tired. But I felt pain. An aching hollowness in my gut, a grief deeper than death. I wasn't a ghost, but I wasn't alive. I wasn't real, but I still existed. Somehow, days passed. Or maybe weeks. Time meant nothing anymore. I watched as my imposter lived my life better than I ever had. He was kind to Rachel, attentive to my parents. He made Jonah laugh again. He even got promoted at the job I was always too lazy to care about. He wasn't just pretending to be me. He was me, but perfected. Improved. Like a version of myself the universe always wished for, and I was the flaw. That realization broke something inside me. One night, I went back to my grave. It was quiet, moonlight gleaming off the headstone like cold silver. I sat beside it, staring at the words etched in stone, Liam Carter 1999, 2025 loved by many. Lost too soon. A sound broke the silence, a rustle, then footsteps. I turned, expecting a mourner or perhaps another illusion. But it was her grandma, dead for 3 years. And yet, here she was, walking through the cemetery as if it were a Sunday garden. "Hello, Liam," she said, smiling softly. "You look lost." My mouth hung open. How are you here?" She chuckled. "Same way you are. Not living. Not quite dead. You're, like me?" She nodded. "Not many of us. Just a few. Some call us echoes. Others call us remnants. We're what's left when the body dies but the soul refuses to cross." "Why me?" Her eyes grew sad. "Because something was taken. You weren't meant to die like that. But something cheated the rules. Took your place before you were done. The thing living my life, it's called a fetch," she whispered. "An ancient parasite. It mirrors you, feeds on your place in the world. Once it roots deep enough, even the people who loved you forget you were ever different. Then how do I stop it?" She looked at the grave. "You don't. Not the way you think. But there's another way. You can make it remember." "Remember what?" "That it's not real. That it's not you. And sometimes, when you make a fetch see the truth, it breaks." She reached into her coat and pulled out an old, cracked mirror. "Show him what he can't bear to see," she whispered. "Show him you." I took the mirror from her trembling hands. It was cold to the touch and heavier than it looked, its glass warped slightly like it had witnessed too much. The frame was tarnished silver, etched with patterns I didn't recognize, symbols that made my eyes ache the longer I looked. I held it against my chest and asked, "What do I do with it?" Her voice was barely more than a breath. "When the fetch sees your true reflection, your essence, not your face, it will remember it isn't alive. But be warned, it may not go quietly." Before I could ask anything more, she was gone. Not vanished like the fetch, but gently faded, like smoke dissolving into wind. And I was alone again. That I stared into the mirror. At first, all I saw was the sky, then the dark outline of trees. But when I tilted it toward myself, something inside me jolted. The reflection wasn't me, not exactly. It was flickering, unstable. My eyes looked too wide, my mouth too still. A strange pulse shimmered behind my image, like static from a broken TV screen that I couldn't tell if I was looking at myself, or what I had become. The next night, I returned to the house. I waited outside until the lights dimmed, until my imposter, my fetch, was alone, sitting at my desk, typing something with the kind of focus I never used to have. He didn't look up, didn't flinch when I pushed the front door open. It swung easily, quietly, as if even the house had started accepting me again. That I stepped inside, gripping the mirror with both hands, holding it like a weapon or a shield. That he must have sensed me. He looked up suddenly, eyes narrowing. "So," he said, standing slowly. "You met her. The old one. Should have known she'd interfere." My voice came easier this time, though it sounded hollow and far away. "This doesn't belong to you." He laughed. "But it does. You gave it away the moment you looked away from your life. I took what you dropped. You should thank me. I'm doing a better job with it than you ever did." I stepped closer, holding the mirror up. "Look at yourself." "I am myself," he hissed, taking another step forward. That I raised the mirror higher. The moment it caught his image, something cracked in the air. A sharp, electric whine filled the room. His reflection didn't match his face. In the glass, he twisted, his eyes turned pitch black, his mouth stretching into a scream. Veins bulged under his skin, crawling like worms. "Stop," he shrieked, but I held it steady. "You have no idea what you're doing. I'm taking back what's mine." His body jolted backward, as if the mirror had hit him like a blast. He slammed against the wall, writhing. The house groaned around us. Lights flickered, picture frames shattered on the floor, and wind rushed in from nowhere, howling through every crack that I moved closer, forcing the mirror's reflection on him. His image cracked like glass, splintering. He screamed again, voice distorting into something not human. His face peeled away in flickers, mine, then a stranger's, then something monstrous and ancient and eyeless, and then, silenced that he collapsed onto the floor. Still. The mirror dimmed, no longer glowing that I stared at the body. Slowly, cautiously, I knelt and reached out. My hand passed right through him, the fetch was gone, and with it, the weight that had been crushing my chest began to lift. Then I noticed something strange. The room, the very air, felt heavier again. Not like before. Not unnatural. But normal. Real. And then I heard footsteps upstairs that I turned. Rachel stood on the landing, staring down at me with wide eyes. "Liam," she whispered. She saw me, not the fetch. Me. I froze, unsure what to do, unsure if this was real. "Liam, is that you?" I nodded slowly. She ran down the stairs and wrapped her arms around me before I could even think. I expected to fall through her. To vanish. But no. I felt her warmth. Her heartbeat. Her tears on my shoulder. I knew it, she sobbed. I knew something was wrong. Behind her, my parents came down, sleepy and confused. My mom dropped her mug. My dad just stared, mouth open. That I stayed for hours that night, talking, crying, answering questions I didn't fully understand. The sky hung gray like an old photograph, the kind you'd find in a forgotten attic box, faded and curled at the corners. The air was thick with the smell of earth and lilies, and somewhere behind me, a church bell tolled a slow, sorrowful rhythm. I stood at the edge of the cemetery, watching the mourners gather near the open grave. Some clutched tissues, others just stood silently, staring at the casket as if it might do something more than simply wait to be lowered into the ground. Their faces were pale, eyes red and swollen, dressed in black and gray like shadows mourning the sun. That I knew each of them. I could call them by name: my mother, bent and shaking beneath the weight of a loss too heavy to speak aloud; my father, his usual stoicism cracking with every tear he wiped away when he thought no one was looking; my younger sister Rachel, who clung to my jacket like a lifeline. My best friend Jonah stood with his hands in his coat pockets, stiff, silent, staring down into the hole in the earth that apparently now belonged to me. That I should have been touched by their grief. I should have felt something: regret, confusion, warmth, even love. But all I could feel was cold. Not the cold of the wind or the season. No. It was something deeper, more unsettling. The kind of chill that wraps around your soul like wet silk, impossible to shake off, because I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to be anywhere. And yet, here I stood, staring down at a coffin I never climbed into, listening to people cry over a corpse they thought was mine. The strangest part was the absence of memory. I couldn't recall dying. I couldn't recall pain or panic or even sleep. One moment I was walking home, tired, a little hungry, and the next I was standing beside my own grave, watching the priest utter words about peace and eternity, about dust and return, words meant to comfort the living, not the dead. That I didn't feel like a ghost. I wasn't translucent or floating or whispering into ears with no sound. I was solid. I touched the bark of a tree on the edge of the path and felt the roughness dig into my fingertips. I picked up a leaf and felt the veins beneath the fragile surface. I breathed. My chest rose and fell. My heart beat. And yet, I was dead. Or so they all believed. Jonah stepped forward first, kneeling beside the coffin. He pulled something from his pocket, a folded piece of paper, a letter maybe, and tucked it under the spray of white roses. He whispered something. I moved closer, trying to hear, but the words were too soft, too sacred for anyone but the dead. Then Rachel followed. She looked younger today, like she had retreated into some earlier version of herself, fragile and scared. Her eyes scanned the crowd, briefly landing on me, and for one horrifying second I thought she saw me. But no. Her gaze moved on, unfocused, and she knelt to touch the coffin. "I miss you," she murmured, tears slipping down her cheeks that I wanted to reach out to her. I wanted to shout, to scream, to wave my arms in the air and prove I was real, alive, here. But my body wouldn't move. My mouth refused to open. It was like the world around me existed in a dimension just out of reach, close enough to see but too far to enter. I wasn't a ghost. But I wasn't part of the living either. I was something else. Something in between. When the last person had said their goodbye, and the gravediggers began to lower the coffin, I backed away, feeling like I was intruding on something sacred and obscene all at once. I turned toward the path that led out of the cemetery, unsure of where to go, unsure if there was anywhere left for me at all. My hands trembled as I walked. My feet left prints in the damp earth, but no one seemed to notice. The world outside the cemetery was just as I remembered it. Cars passed by, people walked dogs, a man rode by on a bicycle whistling a tune I once knew. But none of them saw me. I passed a woman at the corner store I used to visit every day after school. She looked right through me. I reached for the door, and it didn't move. The handle wouldn't turn. I pounded on the glass. Nothing. No sound. No ripple of awareness. Panic rose in me like floodwater, fast and unstoppable. I ran. I ran past houses and trees, past familiar streets that now felt alien and cruel. I didn't stop until I reached my own front door. Home. That was where the truth would be. That was where I would find the answers. That I pushed the door open. This time, it moved. No resistance. I stepped inside. The house was still. Silent. But it wasn't empty. That I heard movement upstairs. The creak of floorboards, the soft shuffle of feet. I moved cautiously, ascending the stairs one at a time, half afraid of what I might find. And then I heard it. My voice. A laugh. A laugh that came from the room I used to call mine. That I reached the doorway and stopped. There I was, sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling through my phone, alive, breathing, completely unaware that I stood just feet away. That I stumbled back, a scream trapped in my throat. My other self, my duplicate, my imposter, looked the same. Sounded the same. But there was something wrong. Something off. His eyes didn't shine like mine. His face was too calm, too cold. He looked like me, but he didn't feel like me. That I watched him stand, stretch, and walk to the window. He muttered something I couldn't hear and then smiled. Smiled. As if today were just any other day. As if he hadn't buried me. As if he didn't just steal my life. Who was he? Myself. They all said the same thing, that in the days before the funeral, I had changed. Colder. Quieter. Distant. Like someone had flipped a switch. They grieved me even before I died, but now. I was back. The next morning, I woke in my old bed. The sun poured in through the window, warm and golden. The mirror sat on my desk, its surface dull and dark. A relic. A key I hoped I'd never need again. Days turned into weeks. Life slowly returned to a new normal. I smiled again. Laughed. Ate. Lived, but there were signs that things weren't quite over. The mirror moved sometimes. Just an inch. A shift. Once I found it facing my bed, though I'd left it facing the wall, and every now and then, I saw someone on the street. A stranger with my walk. My eyes. Watching me just a little too long. That I've learned to ignore it. Most days, I forget, but when the wind howls through the house, and the lights flicker just once. I remembered that I attended my own funeral, and I don't think I was the only one watching from the shadows.